to, I think, find, if not who we are and what we are in terms of musical sources or musical ideas, we're here to learn as much about the process as possible so that at least it becomes a conversation that we can continue our life discussing with other people in terms of why they do what they do. Excuse me. I think one of the more important things that the players that I have played with come to terms with right away is that this is not a music that is founded upon a search, seeking, or any of that. So it has very little to do with what you've learned. This is very strange because we are here in this distinguished academy of learning. And so what I'm saying is there is a point to learning, and you get to a point where you have to unlearn what you learned. And that's where this music comes in. So we have people who are playing this music already classically trained, already jazz familiar, already life experienced, and that's still not enough. So they need an opportunity. They have to find a catalyst to get them beyond what they know so that they can feel some kind of true return to a spiritual reality within themselves, which everybody to some degree is, but not everybody to the same degree is able to live from because of their circumstances as humans on Earth, dealing with what I call the time-space worlds. Time that is already created and established that you have to fit into in order to do this by this hour, by that time, by what age, and so on and so forth. This is a time and then space in terms of what you can fill your head up with in the meantime, in terms of like making sense out of the whole thing you call your life, and so on and so forth. So here we have a form of music that deals with all of these issues. We can say it's like postgraduate music in a manner of speaking, because it's not only then who you are as a universe, then it becomes something of who you are beyond your own universe. I think that's a very big question. And so to play from that, I think, brings us to, let's say, another effort of a person who, I'm not saying this is anything like his music, but the music of John Coltrane, which we can say is already an established form of some kind of ultra-classical, in a manner of speaking, ultra-disciplined, complex set of disciplines where he, at that point in his freedom of expression, is able to go beyond what he's learned and then use exactly what he's learned to express what, not merely what he is, but what he hopes to be. So, yeah, this is a different kind of almost nameless art form. Why? Because it's not so much what you know, it's how you're breathing. So once you have access to your unconscious where you're breathing in such a way, then it does its own thing, so to speak. So then we can go to another concept that's used these days. It's like it's a Zen approach. It's very contemplative. So you have to actually get to the stillness of your own being before you can get to the fierceness of the fire that's underneath everything. Sort of like the stillness of the earth, but you know that over a volcano, a sleeping volcano, you know there's something going on inside there. And that's true of our unconscious. So this plays into allowing the unconscious to have a very special place in the expression, your overall expression, because we are the unconscious, but our learning tends to suppress and inhibit, if not intimidate, the unconscious, in each of us, so that we are capable of fear. And so here's another point. This music has to do with getting through and recognizing the limits of fear. So here's I'm not sure I'll be able to play, because it seems that the need for me today is to hear from you and talk, because you're going to hear music all of your life, but you may not have an opportunity to penetrate psychologically or psychically into why the music is there as it is at all. So here we have an opportunity. I've said a few words. I brought up some concepts. So now it's your turn to interact and exchange with me. Interact now. So who has a question based upon what they've heard so far about the potential nature of this music? Which we have to admit is music, but it's not what we're considering the norm of music, which is to tame us. Say most music is to tame you. Right? That's what the word composition means. You're composed. So that you are, let's say, assumed to be wild and crazy, and so they give you a piece of music to calm you and bring you into some kind of reality. Say, some kind of behavior modification and so on. Say, oh, please learn this. They really want you to be a good person. So that a lot of the music we learn is for our obedience. It's for our obedience, for our training as human beings. So, of course, there's a characterologic implication in the classical music, to say the least, which has to do with the nobility and dignity of the human spirit. So you find things played in a very proper, excellent manner. That's not the truth of anybody, because, we're on Earth after all. This is the home of the Tyrannosaurus Rex. We have to wonder what it would play if it could play. This is its land. It's asleep right now, so we're glad about that. So we pretend to be Tyrannosaurus Rexes in our own right. See, but that's the Earth. So what we're talking about, what is in fact Earth music? How deep is that? What is it? Where do we fit into this Earth music? And we'll see that what's going on out there is everybody else's idea of it, not necessarily our own. So we have a dilemma. Well, where does our own music begin or end in order to get to a place where we can play our music, we have to take on everybody else's music? Yes? Any disagreement there? Very good. We have a brilliant hand right here. It's glowing. Yes?
I mean, the way I think about music is it's not music to a tree because that has its own vibrations. So music really, for all our purposes, is really what's relative to humans.
Not necessarily, but that's a good point, you see, because what do we live in? And I think science is proving that we're living in a field, a space. So we're talking about energies and then subharmonic and ultra, harmonic frequencies that the more refined our interest and curiosity becomes, then the more clearer these realities become, whether it's in the fields of light or in the fields of sound. So that when the curiosity is there, then we say, oh, I got to know what's behind the atom. I got to know. Then we get to the subatom, and we say, well, I got to know what's behind that because I'm a human being and I'm a very lusty creature. I got to know everything, and then I got to know more than that, and then I want to eat up everything at the same time. You see, so we're talking about infinite. We're talking about our human nature as infinity, not even infinite beings, but infinity. So infinity breathes you right now. Just imagine that. Right? Every thought that's ever been, every note that's ever played, you're breathing some of it right now. Every mass and every genius that has ever walked the earth, you're breathing the same air, more or less. It's the same air that's going around, bound to the field of the earth. So you're breathing this kind of like cosmic essence. Right? And now science is catching up to the mystics who had these revelations about, hey, the universe is one and there's all these possibilities out there. We're not the only beings. We have dream beings. We say all of us have dreams of seeing beings. So already we live the fact that we are multidimensional beings, but we don't live as that. We pretend, we're just ordinary people with physical bodies, physical faces, funny clothes and all the rest of that. Funny ugliness is my game is ugly. And so, right, in music too, it's ugly, like ultra ugly. And that's good, it's beautiful, So we're here in a mess. I call it the total mess. We're here and we have to make sense of it. Okay, so for sanity, we study music. For sanity, for some kind of discipline and development of willpower, we study the master's music, so the classics. It's good, it's a starting point. Nowhere is it written in any of that. And if we can bring it, I heard Beethoven is here somewhere. We could bring him in for a minute. We have to ask him, hey, did you want us to be playing your music for 1,000 years after you? Would you do that to anyone else's music, Mr. Beethoven? I think he would say, that's probably it. Okay, so then the question is, what are we willing to do to discover who we need to be right now? And are we a color? Then we bring in the cultural things, because I was born a Puerto Rican, Afro-Rican type of spirit. So my culturing is all dance. And that was it. Your salvation was in your ability to dance and relate to other people. It was all tribal consciousness, native consciousness. And so I, at a very early age, woke up to that. Very early. I think I still had crud on my eyes from my mother's womb when I started to feel the need to play the drums. But not because I wanted to be some kind of musician. I played the drums because I was suffering. I was in pain. And I played the drums as a response to that. The shock of birth. That's why I played the drums. Not to entertain people or compete with people or show up as looking like a great anything. It was a pure survival instinct to survive. To survive what? My family. Right? To survive them. See, those who believe that the culture was the truth. So those who believe that, let's say, religious conditioning alone was the truth. Right? That means like they wanted me to believe everything other than what I was breathing. Because I wasn't a breathing being, I was supposed to be a believing being. And there's an insight into what I play. It's not about belief. It's about what I'm breathing. There's a difference. And we have an opportunity to collapse what we believe and what we've learned, right, to where we are in the moment. That directly, that simply. And we don't need a 9/11, I was saying, to bring us all to a certain kind of resonance with who we are. Not so much what we believe, but what we were actually feeling together. So tragedy then is like always dear to the artist. Tragedy is always a dear friend to the musician. Without it, I mean, a lot of our music wouldn't exist. So give me tragedy. You can keep the romance. Guys, all of my girlfriends you can have. Just give me some tragedy. I'll play from that. You can have all the girls. Say, oh yes, my bass player. Yeah, you? My drummer. You? Yeah, the trumpet player. Go take care of the trumpet player. He has a very, very strong need right now. But for me, I need tragedy. See, my need is tragedy. See? I don't mean terrorism. I mean tragedy. It's that thing that opens and breaks you down and opens your heart. So all you want to do then is just sing or cry. There's not much else to do. See? Helplessness. There's the beauty of it. That's been my school. See? So when people ask me, how do you play? I say, well, this is how I play. From what I've experienced to a degree, but what I am beyond that as a spirit, which is what we all are at the same time. We're sleeping beings as well as we are walking, waking, talking, sexing, and all the rest of that. Acting beings. We're acting, but we're also sleeping. So we need to be awakened beings at the same time. So, and that's our right to be awake and to be totally, completely perfect in our own right without having to compete with the next door neighbors or the next person in any way, shape, or form. And the more we realize our original kind of like okayness or perfection, then you're going to play much more powerfully with more humor, with more zest. See, because you're not allowing your thoughts, your mind, your undisciplined mind to be weakening what you have to play, whether it's a symphonic piece or a jazz piece or a folk piece or a blues piece. You want to be there 100%. Okay? That's our right as musicians and our responsibility as musicians, to be able to do it 100%. And that's where I play from. I'm not sure I'll be able to today, but I'm playing, my voice is playing. So I'm saying what I play. There's no difference in what I'm saying to you and how I play. None whatsoever. Next question. So we are talking about a music that is basic. I will answer your question and hear your question. It's a form of all musics. And so when we're talking about, if you've heard any of the music, especially my recent recordings, for those of you that have a question about sanity, or have a question with sanity about that, then, excuse me, what we're talking about is the presence of all music in this kind of music, and an openness to the presence, the reality of all kinds of music fitting into this kind of, let's say, ideal concept, this stream of sound. Okay? In writing and literature, you have the concept of stream of consciousness. And I think in music, you have that at a higher level, too. Once you have assumed and felt and participated in a certain level of mastery of your music and your feelings and your technique, then it's time for you to turn it over to something deeper, right? So some people get drunk, and maybe they get deeper. Some people have sex, maybe they get deeper. Some people get hurt, maybe they get deeper. Some people get crazy, and maybe they get deeper. So the urge there is to get deeper. Why? Because we go to sleep every night. We go into the deep, deep. So we are owned by deepness, and we tend towards it. We tend towards it, yes. So we are beings who are in the process of becoming the deepest. Go ahead.
I just had a question about what you consider the role of technique. You mentioned it a little bit.
Yes.
What level of technique, we should consider there to be a level of technique that one would have to reach in order to fully
I would say the only thing we can talk about there is extreme technique and whatever comes to your mind. And if we're talking extreme technique, then that means just really, really killing yourself so that you're free of technique altogether. So if we translate that into musical terminology, then we're talking about all the harmonies. And not only all the harmonies, which is a basic grade school level, but then you have to deal with the juxtaposition of harmonies and jazz progressions. And so any progression when I was a child that I heard, I had to rework it. I said, no, everything, it was instantaneous in my case, that everything was relative to one note, whatever that note was. Everything, that note was the pivot. And it was my job, my responsibility as a person who did not want to be bound, that is, as a spirit. When you're searching for freedom, that's a spiritual impulse. We are spirits. We are light first. We wake up into the body. We are light. We enter the light, and we have experiences of light, and you hear about this and that, whatever. And now science is proving the fact that we consist of atoms that are nothing more than light. So we are basically light. And so we're talking about our light reality is where we have to go to, which again comes back to this point of infinity. So all notes equals this point. All music equals this point. So we have a long way to go conceptually, because if you're going to feel whole, you have to, by yourself, if you want to feel perfect in a manner of speaking without an ego being involved in it, like you're perfectly you. You're like, I don't know how many people know, without ego, that you have been designed, you're a perfect specimen of your own being, your own universe. But if you start to judge yourself according to other people, not that it's wrong to compare, because you want to bring yourself up to levels. So if you use others as a reference to improve in a manner of speaking without becoming so vain that you become a Frankenstein, we don't want anybody here to become a Frankenstein unless you feel that that's your ultimate. That's your goal, is to become a Frankenstein. I could be considered a Frankenstein on the guitar, so to speak. I don't mean that in a bad way. Right? So it's ugly. It's ugly in a manner of speaking, but then that's a matter of viewpoint. With the musicians, they don't see it as that. And others don't make any sense out of it. Right? They don't make any sense out of that. But there is sense to it, because we have to keep in mind one very important point. A player of the magnitude of Pharoah Sanders fished me out. He found me. So did Paul Schaefer. Paul Schaefer, we discovered each other in 1969, around there. And so I taught him. I began to taught Paul, because he had his classical training, and he said, but that wasn't enough. He had already learned that. It wasn't stimulating to his mind. He already knew what it was. He already was tired of the predictability and the logic of the music. So he said, oh, no, I need more. And he said, I like what I hear you playing. And I was playing variations of things, harmonic variations, melodic and rhythmic variations on the guitar. And he said, that's what I want to learn. I says, well, then, where can we go? Yeah, so where can we go? So we went to where he was going to school at the time. That was York University in Toronto. And that's where we went to, and we found a music room, and we started a study. And so it went on. And so Paul Schaefer is very well known today, and a beautiful person. And he's a great rock and roll player, but we have to keep in mind his roots were classical. He was a classically trained child, so there you have it. He had this training and the studies. He had the discipline, but he was a rock and roll player, so he naturally loved that and wound up doing that, and that's fine with him. However, on the other hand, he produced a record of mine called Divine Radiance, which would appear to be like white noise for some people. Say, what in the world is that? I said, that's us at the speed of light. What are you talking about? I don't mean this in a certain way, but I mean total, not so much speed. Speed of light means all here. All here. So if you hear something like that, and you get a better idea, but the more important thing is if you slow it down, you start hearing the musics, plural, all the musics, all the frequencies, all the drums, all the beats. You start hearing all the harmonies, and you start hearing the melodies. It's all in there. So it's a compression of a lot of data into what I'm calling a demonstration on a record. It's there, but that's different from other recordings we have done. So Pharoah Sanders is a part of my journey. Pharoah Sanders was very dear to John Coltrane. In fact, I think somewhere on liner notes you hear the point that John made. He said, well, Pharoah was a man of strength, and that he really looked up to this guy. And I was with Pharoah for 7 years, and we lived together. And I can say that John Coltrane was very correct about that. He's a very, very strong, powerful, highly developed character, and a great musician. Okay? As a jazz master, he's a great influence in a manner of speaking. So I've been around with a few of these players. Not because I was striving to be with them. No, they had to come and get Tisziji. Tisziji is not a striving kind of person. He has a whole other agenda that is given from his own unique, let's say, purpose here. To quote the Matrix concepts, what is your purpose here? So my purpose here is to help people spiritually, help them understand the why behind the scenes, so that they feel more confident, more knowledgeable, so they can stand up and not be blown over by, let us say, lies, blown over by deception, blown over by the make-believe world as such. Pharoah is very strong. Paul is very strong. I am very strong. And the people who I associate with are in the process of becoming very strong. That means true. Strong in terms of what is true. And we're here to find out what our trueness is. And that's a point. Any other questions, please? Yes, very good.
I was struck by something you brought up a few minutes ago that I didn't really get all of about the fire within.
Yes.
And before realizing that, you got to come to terms with the conscious, the stillness.
Oh, yes. Yeah, it's a paradox. Yeah, it's a paradox. But then I was using the image of the earth. Because you see the earth's nice plain. You're looking at the plain. It's calm, peaceful, inviting. You want to get down on your knees and kiss it. You say, oh, Mother Earth, man, this is fantastic. And she's so fruitful, right? Until she has to belch in the form of a volcanic eruption. Then she's not that anymore. So which is she? She's both. And that's us. We are that. We're the total. But conditioning would have it that we are repressed and inhibited, so we are full of the fears society wants us to have, that it is our responsibility to undo as artists. Undo that, or you'll be done in by it. It will do you in. You're being done in by it right now. Right? With this whole scourge of terrorism out here that just spook us out. Us? Spook us out? Musicians? Look at the likes of Beethoven out there, right? Have you seen that? What is he going to say to people that come up and say they're going to blow themselves up? Right? Hey, do what you got to do. In the meantime, let's get back in the synth hall. Let's do what we got to do. All right? In the meantime, you come here, we'll blow you up, right? With sound, so to speak. All right? So we are that. So I think part of the process is to learn as much about your own psychology as you're learning about your notes. Because often when the musicians come to me, and there's a lot of people, cultural background, and they say, man, I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. Well, I say, you're not playing the right music, my brothers. You got to go deeper than the cultural norm. Because the cultural norm is, strangely enough, being controlled by a certain lie in all cases. Not that, let's say, jazz is bad. Jazz is great. At any level, it's great. It's good music if it's true for you. But to say that that's the real, like just classical music, when it's really a great stepping stone, is a lie. We're here to go beyond that. We are here. We have an unconscious. We're afraid to even look at, let alone explore. So what are we talking about when they say you're using only 10% of what's left of your brain, right, these days? What's left of the brain, 10%, I'd say maybe more like 1% when we consider we haven't got a clue as to the depth or expanse or breadth of space itself. So if that's our environment, we don't know where we're at. We don't know. We're like, we're here, but that's about it. We're here trying to find out where we came from, that way. So we are all the elements. We're going back now to your points. Earth, we are water, clearly, and all the qualities and characteristics therein. We are fire, right? Earth, water, fire, and air. So we have to then hold precious breathing. That's why I say this is the way that I breathe. We have to hold precious our ability to breathe. Now, of course, we know that people have to smoke, and then they have to smoke, and then they have to smoke. And that's good. I was there, but then I started to get ill from it. Something was telling my brain not to do it, but that's a choice you have to make because you have the freedom to learn your own lessons. Even let us go out there. You have to learn your own lessons about life and taking life. That's an individual choice. So I'm not saying it's legal or illegal. That's something you have to come to terms with. And when you see a dying body in front of you, if you know them especially, and your heart breaks, sure, you can be full of anger, but maybe you have a deeper, more profound insight into the true nature of what life is about in terms of loss and what to do with that. So, and parents who lose their children and so on. It's happening all the time. What to do with that? Where does music come into that? So how do we really feel? What is sex doing to us in terms of making our life better or worse? In terms of suffering and attachment and possession, all these other interesting karmas related to it, wanting to own our mates and control them. All of this is part of it, because if you're bound, then your music's going to be bound. If you're free, then your music's going to have a certain presence, as mine does. It's maybe too wild and free for some people. I don't mean libertinistically free. I'm ultra-conservative. Right? Ultra-conservative. Ugly, right? Ugly. So, but that's an individual choice there for each one of us, yes.
How free do you feel that you are?
Not free enough. You see, and that's the beauty of it. You have to ask Einstein, how smart did he think he was? And he'll tell you maybe not smart enough. I think that stands to reason. I used the word at the very beginning, infinity or infinite. That's really the basis, and I think the driving impulse of the whole universe, let alone our little pipsqueak lives, which we don't see as pipsqueak lives, because, you know, we are so fascinated by how perfect we came out. When you get up in the morning, you look in the mirror, it's like, we just want to kiss that. I don't need a girlfriend or boyfriend. Wow, I'm perfect. Yeah, that's good. I think that's very good. And you feel good, and you go out there and just don't get run over by a truck. You know? I don't recommend that, you know. But that answers your question. You say, how free? Never enough. Never enough. How real? Never enough. How true? Never enough. We have to keep it open. See? Because we have to undo what has been done to us to make us think that we know who we are and what our limits are. We don't know what that is because it's never really tested. It's never tested. Right? Not really. Combat it's tested in combat. Under extreme circumstances, you may be tested. Like the astronauts, they're tested. Firemen are tested. Anyone that's out there like that is being tested. This music is kind of a test because this is pushing the parameters when I'm playing. It's pushing it because I have a handicap, which is great. Yeah, for you, my fellow handicapped people. It's good to have a handicap, to push yourself, not to validate suffering, but to prove that the suffering is not real. That we are here to go beyond that. The suffering is real, you can feel it. But as we all have heard many times in all kinds of circumstances where there have been these crises, and people who assume they can only lift to 300 pounds, all of a sudden adrenaline sets in, or let's say spiritual power comes in, and you can lift 1,000 pounds and not even know it. When somebody's underneath that gravel or whatever the object is, car, truck, and let's say you love them, you're going to pull in a lot of power all of a sudden. You wonder where you got it from. You say, oh, God, or whatever. Hey, maybe it's your attachment. Maybe it's your love. That could be God, too. So the forces are right there with you. So here we're talking about music that includes an understanding of nature completely, and psychology, because you're a thinking being. You're trying to figure out everything. You're trying to analyze everything. You're trying to come to some understanding. But then we have to realize, from this point of view, you have to realize that understanding is a limitation. So you say, well, I have my realization or your certification. You got your certification to graduate from here. Then you go, I don't know enough yet. I'm still asking my girlfriend dumb questions about how we do it. You know, I have my degree, I'm walking 10 feet tall, and I'm asking her silly questions like, well, why did I do it that way? So, well, she's going to get back if she's smart. She'll say, well, because they didn't teach you in school. You didn't learn anything in school, say. So we don't have a program out here, how to do sex thing, school, right? You can't get a degree in that, right? And it shows up. It really does show up. Right? It shows up. Not anyone here. I'm not saying anyone here, but in the world. I'm going to give you all credit. You got this far. You're all great. You came this far. It's great. So, any other questions pertaining to these issues, please?
Yeah. How do you relate patience and discipline with getting to that free place?
Patience and discipline. As soon as you put your eyes on the paper of any score, any particular technique, system, you're cultivating both those things, patience and discipline, right there. Then we say at the most basic level is just focus. Boom. Willingness to sort of be still. A willingness to be present. And not just what you put in your head, because in Zen meditation you have to be present, but you're emptying your head. You say? And so the idea, of course, is to be willing to find peace in yourself, so that this is not a religious issue. This is a physics. Bring yourself down to an alpha wave level. Just physics, not metaphysics. It's just science now. Energetics and so on. All right? And so you just get into a calm state. Now, if what they say is true for the brain experts, the psychologists, if they say, well, listen, alpha wave energies, what happens when people go into their zone, creative zone? Well, then we can cultivate that by slow breathing, which is basic yoga technique. So then we start to take control of our nervous system and calm the beast in us, but then there's always a balance. Calmness and then fury, calmness and fury. And so often we don't bring enough peace to our sexual relationship. We bring a lot of fury and tension and anxiety. And that's really not what it's maybe ultimately for. And so we can make relations work that way when we say we have a responsibility to our peacefulness together. Instead of, well, listen, I need this because I'm feeling this way, and this happened to be down the street. I just got mugged, and just roll over and, let me do what I have to do to get straight with myself, right? And so on, right? And then the woman has a right to say, there, you can get straight with yourself right out that door, young man. Go back to school, learn how to do it right, and we won't have this conversation again. So, and we're talking about loving then. All right, and then we never asked today, how does loving play a part in our music? Who do we love? How do we love? Is it just music? What do we do in order to enhance our own capacity to appreciate life? Right? What do we do? That's a good question. Because if you find a certain kind of love resonance, it's going to bring you to what you just said, discipline, focus, and patience. You notice that they say when people are in love, I mean, it's like ideals. How can you not be in love in that case? If it's so divine like that, everything is so perfect. It seems you're in an ecstatic level. So what is that? Well, I mean, what is happening there is resonance that's coming from what? Our own being. So we have to try and stop and to figure out where that love is coming from. And some people would say immediately it's the heart. So we've got to try and analyze for ourselves whatever that heart is. Where is it? What is it? Why is it so real? How come it only shows up for everybody on a 9/11 date? Where in New York you could walk down the street and just about hug and kiss everybody as if they were like, your family from back in the old country that you hadn't seen in 50 years. That would be my guess because, I'm graying. So I say 50, for you guys maybe a few years. But a long time. What happened to that? This is amazing how tragedy just provoked so much generosity. I mean, people would actually stop their cars in New York City, practically get out. It wasn't like unreal to think they'd get out and help you cross. During that time, it was practically like that. What happened? It wasn't about drugs. It wasn't about anything. It was just disaster. Is a master of the heart. And so we want to be able to not welcome it or look for it. We want to be able to know what it is because, listen, death is the ultimate disaster. It's coming into everybody. It's coming up to all of us. No spook here. You were born to die. There's no spook here at all as far as that goes. We're already dying. But then it's how do we want to die? How much a part of that script do we have anything to do with? So I say, for those who really care about this, find beautiful music, what you consider to be beautiful music for yourself. Find beautiful company and try and keep it like that as much as possible. And there you might find your death in the midst of such beauty. But for others who don't care that much about anything, then it's going to come as it comes. Okay? Because I think that we have a co-responsibility with the life forces to keep our health happening and have some kind of agreement or relationship or resonance with our own death. It's not unusual. We don't have to be natives in order to have a certain kind of openness or appreciation to our own naturalness. And that includes death, life, and breathing, right? And everything else that happens around us in the real world outside of our particular interest. Okay? And I think we see in the world today, everybody's who's in their interest is not caring enough about the whole. And so you see what the chaos is here, right? So we are victims, let's say, of our self-interest in a manner of speaking, because it's not world interest as such. But no one's saying that's bad. That's how we're doing it. So that's where it is until we change it. But I think it's fair enough to say we have an opportunity to change that for ourselves to some degree. Not to become politically world interested necessarily, as much as spiritually world interested. I think that's the point, from the heart. We are humanity, as I was saying earlier at the very beginning of this talk. We are the cosmic situation in miniature. And the scientists are finding that to be true. The more they examine what we are made of, the more they see the universe. The more they see all the activities that are happening out there right now. And all the nebula and everything, it's all inside of us. Well, we're projecting it as we look at it anyway, which is one of the paradoxes of consciousness and intelligence as it is. So we are projecting what we see. So is that what we see, or is that who we are? Is what we see who we are? Like what we hear, is that who we are? So these are questions. What you hear on the radio, is that who you are because you're hearing it? Or is that what you don't want to be? So these are good questions. Because as you play and as you write down your notes and you figure out, let's say, your musical journals tonight or tomorrow, you say, well, I heard these ideas, but now I'm feeling this after hearing these ideas because something happened. Something reconnected me with something that is just as much an important part of your music, which is its trueness, and finding that. Sometimes you have friends to bring you to that. Sometimes you'll have friends that will keep you far away from your trueness, and that's something you have to judge for yourself. Who are your real friends based upon the feeling of trueness that you have? Authenticity, as some would call it. So the company you keep is very important. Don't be with people, I would say, just because you need to be with them for some political gain or something. That might be dangerous. See? We have to be more aware of what we're doing and then be open to what comes with it. All of this is related to this music. That's why I play this music, so that when I'm playing this, I'm not letting other kinds of music in now. I already have. Now this is outflow. It's an outflow. This is what I'm giving you from another level. Take it or leave it. That's exactly what it's for. And what you don't like this year, come back in 10 years and hear it and see if it's the same for you. And I've had many people say, it was grotesque when I first heard your music, Tisziji, parts of it. So, but now, a few years later, I'm actually thinking that way, which means there may be some kind of developmental thing related to what is happening here, but I won't give it that much credit. I'd rather say it's up to the individual. We won't give it that much credit. The same with a sonata, or the same with let's say a symphony. We're not going to say that, man, you can't hear it today, and maybe in 10 years you hear it better. It's a possibility. Depends on which way your growth is going, because for some people, they say they don't want to hear that music anymore, or jazz, they say, or blues. I don't want to hear that anymore. Hey, I started out with Elvis, but you don't hear any, blue suede shoes now in my music exactly. It's not there now. Some reason it faded out. Not to say anything against him, but it's just the form has no reality now as such. Now I look at it, something else, and I see that to be more the case. And that's for each of us as composers or practitioners, or let us say lovers. If we can maintain that we are here to love life and find others who help us love life more completely and more perfectly. I think that's a very good way. And your music, I'd be interested in that music when it's all about that. I don't mean love songs per se, because that's a softness and a subtlety that I can't always endure. So I need some firmness too. I need some strength. I need fierceness and gentleness. So gentle fierceness is very good for what I'm doing. Any other questions in terms of the idioms of music, whatever they may be, to folk, blues, jazz, classical, going. Anything else about that? Yeah, the amp is dead. Yes, please, question. Yes, very good.
Danny asked how free you felt you were, and you said not free enough.
Never free enough. That's a figure of speech.
And then you said also that your music was about pushing boundaries. But then at the same time, that it's not about striving. And I wonder if you see
Not about what, please?
striving.
Oh, yes.
Striving.
Oh, yes, yeah.
On one hand,
Very
there's
good.
striving,
Very
on
good.
the other hand,
That's why I say it's all about the breathing. I'm not striving to breathe. It's happening. The earth is not striving to position itself relative to day or night. It's happening. So there are some things that we have to acknowledge are already in place. You're not wanting to get old. You're not striving to get old. I bet you're not striving to get old, right? Look at a guy 99 and a half and look at yourself, whatever you are. You say, you might have a judgment of beauty, of grace, charm or something, and he's gagging up all this stuff and you're feeling robust. You're ready to take on the world. And he's like, already spit out from whatever's left of his life. You understand? He's already less than life, right? In a manner of speaking. You see, so the striving part is good, where the attitude is openness and making. So there's striving in the word making. Openness, being open, right? Listening, hearing, but not just hearing what you're hearing. You can't stop at hearing what you're hearing, because what you're hearing is not what you're really here to hear. You're not here to hear the appearance of hearing, right? You're here to hear the truth of hearing. That's like all the way. Not just, okay, I'm seeing the wall. That's a perception. But I'm seeing my own being as like all the way. whether I'm here, there, wherever. That's then a perspective of perception of what it is that you're seeing and being for yourself, whether it's a piece of music, whatever. If you're going to talk about a piece of music, you might want to, just listen to what you're playing and say, okay, this is supposed to be a major chord here, whatever it is. And say, but do I feel happy with it? Is it really bringing this piece to a harmony here? Is it really there? Or a lyric? Is this lyric really consonant or dissonant? Is it true? What is the lyric? And say, hey, I heard this lyric, the same lyric a little while ago, and it had a different harmony on it, under it. Which is it? What did the composer do, or the lyricist? Whatever happened? Why the same word, right? Sadness, and then it's a major chord here, which is possible, of course. Happy sadness, right? No problem. And then here it's that. You have to make those determinations in terms of those values. See? For yourself. They are subjective, but that's what an artist is. Master of subjective perception, right? For objective purpose, right? For a result. That's your responsibility then. And you have to live well with it. So that's why if you know yourself, and that's why a lot of artists, I'm going to make this point, have had the tendency in history to go away from society so that they feel they strip themselves well enough so that they know exactly how they feel about a thing, and they know it has nothing or little else to do with others, and the criticism is irrelevant to them. Criticism is irrelevant to them. It's important. That means you're not allowing yourself to be targeted or damaged by criticism, which doesn't really have a place in your reality. Although, it's there. But you have to understand that criticism is relative to everybody, and we're all critics, but you have to know what you can let in to do you damage, to hurt you and kill you if you're that open. So it's no criticism intended to kill you, right? It's just another, mind form that people have a right to share. So, hey, garbage. It's great. People say, Tisziji, it's all garbage. It's fantastic. Compost. I love it. It's a very good compost. Call it what you want. It works. So why? Because I have the musicians in the background to prove it. It works. Right? When Pharaoh says something about the music, he knows. It's not like he has to like it or anything. So there are people who understand that you have to see where they're at in their hearing and in their knowledge. Say, well, the public doesn't like this, but man, if Pharaoh Sanders likes it and he has a comment on it, there may be something there. I'm not saying you have to believe it. Don't believe it, but you have to see from that. So, and that's the same with all criticism for any piece of music. You don't have to believe it. You have to taste it yourself. Smell it yourself. So, see if it works for you. Any other questions? Any other comments on this kind of music, which we're not able to hear right now? Was there anybody who has any other comments? Kritavi, you have any comments? You're just taking it in, yes? Okay. And so we're down. Yes, we'll take a 5-minute break, and those of you that manage to stay, we'll see if we can get the music up and running. I appreciate your patience. Thank you very much for your kindness. Good, very good. Keep it going. Nice groove. Yeah, so there you had a sample of a thoughtless, no, too loud, please, less. A thoughtless but heartfelt kind of a interaction here, despite the technical difficulties we have. Just making it work. I think if relationships would give at least half the effort that was made to get the sound out, I think we'd have a greater place to live in here today. So, very simple. See, nobody had to be told what to play. Interesting, right? Not one word. Except I told John at the beginning, so watch one sketch that we have up there, just a few notes. So I'm not saying that amounts to anybody's idea of music, but the feeling is there. See? Now we can go out. We're not going to beat anybody up when we leave here. I can guarantee you that. I don't know about you, but I know we're in a good spirit right now. That's the purpose of it. Not just to entertain ourselves in our minds, but to get to a good place, get to the good feeling point. Then there's some healing going on. So that's what we're here to do, is get to the healing point. Yes. Yeah, how you doing? So. Very easy. Just like that last note fading out. Any questions about that? Good. Very good. Yeah. Yeah, we have to thank the guys. We have to thank the guys. They're all wonderful players. Great cats. Rakalam. Justin. John. We also have a new sound man on board. Ken Jones is doing a brilliant job here, believe it or not. Great job. Denpo. Yeah. And so I think what we felt there was a good let's say, exposure to a sincerity of simple things, okay? Not mental things or intellectual things. We're just working with something to get a healing feeling happening. But as you know, if you're musically aware, it wasn't limited to things, although we did gravitate along certain pedal tones and roots. But that didn't determine what we had to play. Okay, so here we're talking not about an academic approach, but certainly we need an academic approach. We need a higher level of intelligence working all the time, as well as being able to get off of that and be able to get inside ourselves where we can feel some kind of healing and some kind of peace, get in touch with the own inner peace. Now, you have to vote. Yeah, so at this point, Johnny Lockwood has maxed out his ability to be here in terms of time, so he's going to bolt out of here while the rest of us hold the fort for a while longer. Johnny Lockwood. The great Johnny Lockwood, yes. Yeah. Yes. But the discussion, for those of you who are still here, can continue in terms of any other questions about things that we discussed earlier. It's open. What time is it, please? 2:30. So people have to go now? They got to go? So it's over?
No, keep talking for about half an hour.
Oh, yeah, I think so. We could play it. Yeah. Yeah, we'll play one more piece. Toya, if you can handle it. And I do think that while it's really great to hear music, even this kind of music in the open form that it's presented in, it's good to ask questions, because here we have an opportunity to learn a little bit about the why and the how, as well as the what you're listening to. You know, there are a lot of people who followed the music, the jazz music of John Coltrane. I'm sure they would like to ask him questions why he played certain things the way he did. Please. You want to stand up and let everyone hear? No.
I want to ask.
No, don't listen to him. Go ahead. Yes.
So I want to ask you about how you get to where you are when you start playing, from where you are before you start playing, and how that has changed over the years that you've been dealing with this music.
Would you state that again for everyone to understand?
Okay. I wanted to ask Tisziji how he plays, how he feels, what he does, what is the process to play from when he starts to play, and how that has developed over the years. Maybe what things have taken less time than they used to, or what things you still have to do every single time.
Well, I think the idea of being true every single time is a discipline in itself, okay? Because we often play from what we've heard. And some things that we hear are of such magnitude or impact that they stay with us. And so we want to be sure that that staying with us is staying with us for a purpose that we agreed to. Whether it's a melody or a lullaby or something here on the street or at a club, or on the radio, or at a recital. You say, well, why? What from the composer is sticking with me here? What of his thoughts or whatever? So we have to be careful, I think, of what we take in, so as to know what it is that we got left to let out. You understand? And so I think that being true is very important. It always comes back to that. And so I have to know what I'm listening to, like conversations, in my case, not just music, but arguments with relatives, people, neighbors, is very basic stuff, and how you feel and what you do with that. And so I think that's an ongoing discipline in order to keep the peace with yourself so you're able to play. And as I said earlier, breathing is a way of breathing. And by that I mean a certain kind of continuity of flow. Not being different, except that playing right now for my body is very stressful now, physically. And I have certain other issues that make it a little bit harder for me to play than ordinary. And so you people that have a full body, I say, it's fantastic. You have a great gift, you should use it. Some of us don't have a full body in the same way, but we have to make use of it as well as we can. So you have to really celebrate what you've got in terms of your body and your mind, your intelligence, your sanity, your dignity. You got to celebrate these things in your music. And that's what I try to do as much as possible, even though the forms may change over years. When I was working with Pharaoh, he was playing a lot of John Coltrane music. And so those are things I remember very well. But I don't want to have to depend upon that as part of my statement, because that was Pharaoh's relationship to John that he was coming from there, because he worked with John. So the tunes of John, the mechanisms, the harmonic mechanisms and the melodic devices he was working on, scalar devices or whatever, were the things that he brought to Pharaoh, and Pharaoh had to consider it. It was being jammed into his head every time they got together and they played on a gig or something. So he had to deal with it, but it didn't mean that was him. You see, he knew that wasn't him. And so he and I have talked over the years about that, and he said, well, it's hard to listen to Train to follow John. He said, here, John just took a 30-minute solo or so. What can you play? And he's a second horn player, and he's 14 years younger, and he's like a baby compared to that. So, but he came up with things. So he had to get beyond thinking, what can I do? You see, why? Because he was being after the solo. You got to play from that too, not just what you know, but what you're being, right? You have to get access to your being. What are you being in that moment? Right? What are you being? So I think this is part of the process. Sure, forms have changed. I played a lot of different forms. My earlier forms were classical forms when I was younger. I made it my business to do that. In my gene pool, we have classical guitar makers in my family. So that's a tradition and a culture that's very close to me, flamenco music. But I don't show traces of that. That's because I've been able to look in the mirror and see beyond my family. I've been able to look in the mirror and see beyond my past, or my basis, my mother and her ancestry from Andalusia, whoever they were. I was able to look beyond that, see, because then it goes back to a point, you have to know you're more than you appear to be. Remember, you go to sleep, and after you go to sleep, entering it, you might have a few flashes here or there, memory or whatever, and then you're in the deep. And then you don't remember that. That's because what happened? Where are you? Who are you when you're not there? See, that's about your being. See, it's not a trick. It's not trick philosophy. It's a fact. We sleep. Every one of us is a sleeping being, half of the time, maybe a little less. All right? But that's it, who you're being. And again, for me, my responsibility is to be a true being, and that means true to the heart and true to peacefulness, and grant everybody the dignity and respect of peacefulness that they deserve, because the earth needs it. People need it. We're capable of it. And some of us have to practice doing that. But it's better to practice, especially to your loved ones and your friends. So then we're talking about relating to maybe something that is about the heart and feeling good. But maybe some people don't want to feel good, so they're not there. And you bring them peace, and they want to hit you over the head with the first object they see, like in a bar somewhere, right? Where, piece of furniture. Say, oh, yeah, you want peace? How about a piece of this couch I'm sitting on right here? You blah, 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 you got to run for your life, right? So what is that person being? They're being what they're being, and you got to make sure you know what you need to be, otherwise you're going to be a victim, for sure. And you don't want to play from that all the time, because the blues let's say, celebrates a beautiful victimization of consciousness in a way. Yeah, we're down and out, but we still have dignity and respect, so we play a simple form. That's the blues. But nobody is just that. You know what I mean? Nobody is just that. That's just a form we use. Like, again, from my salsa background, I'm not that. I'm not just a dance machine. More than that. I'm not just a rhinoceros in the jungle. I'm more than that. I'm not better than that. I'm more. So you're not better. So yeah, I'm elephants, I'm everything. Yeah, birds, insects, atoms, microbial realities, the whole 9 yards, or million yards, zillion. We are all of it. We don't stop and look at it and then tap into these the more cosmic elements that we are. Okay? And you say, oh, hi, Mom. Yeah, excuse me, Mom. I'm into microbial contemplation right now. I have to call you back. It's very important to me, Mom. I'm getting to know you, too, by the way. I'm learning a lot here about you, Mom and Grandma. Oh, this is heavy stuff here, right? In earlier days in the 60s, it was like cellular awareness, perhaps. So yes, it's being human. I think what we're talking about is being human, but not just being human, because that's not enough either. It can't be a label. You have to be bigger than the labels, and that's what we are. Our potential is bigger than the labels. And I think that's what a composer's responsibility is to do, is to see themselves as a whole thing. See? I'm sure Beethoven can get off the stand if he's on. I haven't even seen him yet, but if he can get off, and you say, hey, Bate, or Ludwig, excuse me, Mr. Ludwig, are you just the music you play or what? And he might tell you, well, listen, I have to go on these great long walks in the cold, take cold showers because, hey, I'm living. I'm more than just what I play, more than my occasions, moments of inspiration. There are other things, more important things. I'm trying to raise a nephew. He doesn't want to learn how to play piano. He's my genes, and I can't even teach him how to play the piano, so he went off and he wanted to kill himself, right? He had to commit suicide, right? Attempted suicide. So that's a hard on Beethoven, but there you see, Beethoven then had something to play with. He had something to play from. Because what he was being is an uncle who was suffering the effects of it. But that's good for the music. So you listen to his music. He really brought in a pure form of emotional, tragic quality, sorrow, sadness, and grief. It's very pure in his playing. Now, let's say as the story goes, if he's there where Napoleon is bombing Austria or wherever, and they said that poor old Beethoven, deaf or not, was ducking bombshells. Good grief. Man, that would make for some music, right? What you say? Right? Oh, excuse me, I was playing it up. Whoa, just missed me by about 10 feet that time, not close enough. Let me get back to the piano. I can't hear it anyway. I'm just seeing it explode all around me. Okay? Right? And so this is it. What you're being is very important. So we can take all the theory, you absorb it, you learn it, you master it, play all the tricks, but then what are you being beyond that? You see? What is that? What's after that? Because I've had a lot of classical musicians in the past come to me with their problems. Hey, a lot of them see head shrinks, by the way. Right? Why? When the music is so perfect, why would they want to go see a head shrink when you can just play a piece and just melt away, it would seem? Because it's not enough. See, maybe they're playing it too much or something, right? So a lot of people have these problems. They build up these tensions through the music they play, and there's not enough release, and so you have a breakdown. You have disturbances, and you're taking on more karma in some ways than you can handle, so you go crazy, right? So it's like coerced madness. It's not like, having a genius break or something like that. It's just too much pressure. Genius might be ability to handle the pressure, for all we know, right? Maybe more, maybe less. So all of this plays into it. We're all possessed by the same spirit. The potential is there. It depends on what you want to access when you sit with yourself and say, well, what am I really going to be today and tomorrow? Be. Say, what and who can I be? That's your responsibility as a growing spirit here. So I want to be a master of music. Okay, I see how to do that. I go to school, do this, play this. I see the standard already. Is that enough for you? Because you can see it in 1 second. You can see the whole track. You say, well, I stay in school for 20 years or so, and I'll have mastery, and then I'll be a master. But, okay, what else? Who else? You're a master of music. All right, great. Maestro, all right, orchestra conductor. Doesn't mean you're happy, my point. What are you being? You understand? So that's it. Regardless of what you play, what are you being? The violinists, Joshua Heifetz, learn how to conduct themselves the way he did. They learn a lot from him, right? We know, we've heard of him, right? Great violin master, and very confident. Amazing confidence, right? If you want to be like that, but is it just the music? No, then sitting with himself. He had to be Heifetz himself. He had to come to terms with what he was, who he was, what he was being, what was coming back to him from what he was being in the universe. So that's part of it. So to be a musician, I think, is very sacred. You become a part of a priestcraft, right? Because you can control the emotions of other people. You can make or break their lives in some cases. Those are more weak. than others. They hear music, and I mean, this is true. People hear lyrics and go crazy with the lyrics. So our word is very powerful. You play a few notes and people go crazy. So resolution is important. So that's what you heard here, a little bit of resolution. Not a bunch of, smoke and mirrors, just resolution, come down, come back to peace. It's important. It can be faked because it's not, coming back to peace is not about playing a certain note, because you can play that all the time and not have the peace. You have to have some meaning. Meaning has to be there. That's something you bring to yourself, the meaning. Any further questions? That help? Right? So this is a way of life, right? Not just an act as such. Not only that, it's acting in an appropriate manner, but it's a way of life. And you're musicians, it's your way of life. And there's nothing more sacred than that, if you ask me. Right? With the sound, being channels of sound, right? Great sounds. A lot of great music out here. A lot of people don't live up to the music. We have to face that too. Right? Who's living up to the music? The character of the music you play. Who's living up to it? Is there a responsibility to it? Do you have a responsibility to be dignified and carry yourself in a certain manner, as some of the so-called musicians were before you, Bach or others? How did they conduct themselves? When were they angry? How often? Who did they beat up? Mozart. How many times did he offend or insult people? Who wanted to kill him? How many times? How many husbands wanted to get him and tear him from limb to limb before he died, whatever he was, right? A rascal. Say, who do you want to be? This is part of your music, right? You're sitting at the piano and figuring out what you want to play, right? Your breathing, your memory, your feelings, and you go deeper. The idea is we need to try and get deeper. Get deeper. That's our responsibility. To get musical, yes, of course. Master that, but get as deep as you can. So where you're coming from is true. Yeah. I don't mean to make it seem it's heavy. It's not heavy. It's very light. It's very light. Because we're now acting as creators and composers. So yeah, the universe is in our hands, right? We have weapons of mass destruction, in a matter of speaking, if you use them incorrectly. Right? And you don't want to destroy yourself. So you want to make sure you're healing yourselves first of all. Don't play music that's going to make you feel bad. You have to be responsible for that. No one's telling you to play that music, unless, of course, it's a requirement at school. You say, okay, I'm tired of this, but I can't wait to get out of here so I can play something different. But you had to do it for a requirement, so you bear along with it, because you are capable of doing it if you try. All of it, I'm telling you. You're all capable of finishing up perfectly if you choose to do that. Okay. Not let too many other things degrade your capacity. Don't let too much enter in and corrupt your capacity. Okay, it's your responsibility to maintain optimal capacity. So, any other comments or questions? Yes, please. Say again. A vision and a distraction. Well, a vision could be a distraction could be a vision. It really depends on what you already know you need to focus on. Then anything less than that or other than that could be considered appropriately a distraction you can either use or you can be abused by. Depends on what you are setting out to do. Depends on what you're setting out to do. If you're, let's say, trying to compose a classical piece in your idea of a classical piece, a pianissimo piece, or something nice and gentle, quiet, very majestic and simple, right, melodic, and you have a neighbor who's got a jackhammer next door, right, and he knows what you're doing, so he's going to put it right up against your wall and say, "Take that, wise guy," right? What are you going to do? I mean, what do you do? Is that a distraction? You have to determine if that's a distraction, right? You have to determine, say, wait a minute, give me a brilliant idea, but I'm going to wait till he stops. I have that feeling now. I have the idea he gave me. I remember the thought. And so I just take a note. Oh, okay, yeah, Mr. Sanchez, okay, I'm going to get to you a little later, but not personally. You're going on paper. Thank you very much, Mr. Sanchez. You're in my next play, by the way. Right? So you have to use it. That's what the artist is supposed to be doing, knowing how to capitalize on every particular impulse, not just specific events. But again, let's say hypothetically the composer's mind is like a machine that's processing everything. Everything. A blinking of the eyes, why not? Now, that's not what I do, but I have an intelligence that enables me to say, well, of course I know what it is. That source, I'm a composer like everybody else here. You're composing your day today. You've already composed probably most of it, right? It's already scripted. You know where you're going to be in a couple of hours, or where you have to be in some cases, or where you better be in other cases. It's scripted. So you know, you have an idea of what's going on. But then, it's more important than to consider, in terms of post-scholastic accomplishments, what you're going to do, what else you want to specialize in, what's your niches, what you really want to do. Go to Japan, study, flower music or something, who knows, right? Maybe there's not enough of that. And I say, oh, okay, here, my sonata for the flowers, or whatever, the garden sonata, not the moonlight, let's say something else, right? So, and you do that. So again, it's all your presence of mind is very important in this. So presence of mind, you have to have a scientific basis, but you have to be the composer intelligence, and everybody has that. They just don't stop and use it. Whether you're photographic intelligence, whether you're philosophic intelligence, you have to have that same kind of creative awareness. There's no escaping it. And then what you become is what you've been able to take time to jot down and figure out for yourself, put together as who you are, as opposed to, not opposed to, but different from others. Because it all comes to you a unique way. Unique, right? Your smile, your gestures, your timing is all unique. Right? It's perfect. It's already perfect. But if you don't see it from that viewpoint, then you're going to have complications. Your idea of not perfect, looking for the perfect because you're thinking imperfect, can be a long journey of a lot of strange places and people. Okay, already perfect is very simple. You have an instrument already perfect, you go right to it, you start to do it. Already perfect, and then you wait. You wait. You work with your waiting. Give birth to it, right? You have to give birth to it. You have to get pregnant too, right? So that's what you're perceiving all the time. All right, the proper conception. Say, good. Say, our responsibility is the composer mind to do that, to the degree that you need to do it, not to the degree that someone else has to do it. The individual has to do it, because you're the master of your universe, actually, and you're training to become more completely that as time goes by, and that's occupationally speaking. Then karmically speaking, in terms of causes and effects from the beginning of time, we're also part of mastering that kind of flux too. What happens to us relative to the world? We're responsible for that, but we don't think about it as such. Well, who else is responsible for it? You turning the TV on. Who's responsible for you turning it off? Who's responsible for you reading a newspaper and getting bent out of shape about it? Who's responsible for that if it's your choice, you're doing? See? So there are many different aspects to the understanding of awareness that come into this. But again, the composer's mind is very, very simple. Be open. Stay open. Take note, right? And use it to the best of your ability. Even a few notes. 3, 4, 5, whatever you want. So use it. Put words to it. Some of you have unrecognized gifts in lyricism, and so you want to be able to figure out, well, maybe I can put a line on these notes here, this melody. Maybe I can find better words than Bob Dylan. Maybe. Who knows? You have to be the judge there. You have to put yourself to the test and determine that for yourself. See? Otherwise, you're just following everybody else. You've got to test yourself. You've got to want to do it, but you have to feel that you have the potential to do it, and we all do. Right? You have the potential. You're here because you are potential. You're already awakened potential. That's why you're here in this classroom today. So awakened potential. I'm just simply responding to a need to bring into words what everyone already knows is true and real for themselves, relatively speaking. So. There's a request from behind the scenes here to play a little bit more on the sound. So if that's what we can do, I'll do a little bit, a small thing.